All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I can't quite hear you. I'm just kidding. All right, glad to be your first session of the day. Hope your morning is starting off good or great or not that terrible, depending on if you have fires brewing at home. Anyhow, my name is Chris Lynch. I'm a product manager in our software-defined cloud group, responsible for core experiences in HPE OneView and Synergy. I'm here today to talk to you about the journey to hybrid IT, and I have a panel of wonderful, great experts here to talk to you about a few different things. Stardate. All right, so your customers and our customers are transitioning into new lines of businesses focused around IT and digital experiences. They're demanding new ways of tackling the challenges of IT that we've grown up from the past to today, both from a competitive advantage perspective as well as new lines of businesses that empowers them for innovation. And it just doesn't affect the traditional players in a lot of different verticals that have had a long-standing tradition of IT. But a lot of our enterprise customers, as small businesses, are transitioning to or being experienced by what we call digital disruption or digital transformation. They want to enhance their experiences around IT and how they deliver services to their end users, both from a greater level of intelligence, focusing on products and services that is uniquely tailored to their customers, as well as the speed that they need to deliver those services, again, from a competitive advantage. We know tech is everywhere. Everyone here has at least 3 or 4 devices. Your mom and dad at home have 5 or 10. The refrigerator has its own. But every device is connected, and we don't see that slowing down. So customers are needing to transition to different ways of delivering IT. There we go. So when we talk to our customers about delivering new services, new capabilities to their end customers, they tell us that they want a simple way to consume resources. They want a unified way of accessing those resources. You've even heard HPE talk about infrastructure as code, the DevOps model that a lot of our customers have transitioned to, the simplicity that it delivers to their, not just to their admins, but delegating the ability to manage and control that infrastructure faster, breaking down the barriers of traditional IT of different units, different groups owning specific portions of the data center. But at the same time, the flexibility of being able to both deploy to public clouds as well as on-premise private clouds for various different reasons, whether it be for security reasons, performance reasons, cost. And speaking of cost, the pay-as-they-grow type model, both taking what public cloud offers in terms of the amount of CPU, the amount of RAM, the disk capacity, and they're charged a monthly cycle, to also providing that on-premise capabilities with their private cloud offerings. So we're here to talk about 4 different areas about how HPE and Microsoft fit within your customer environments. First, we're going to talk about how HPE OneView for System Center can enhance and improve your customers' experiences when dealing with System Center, both operations orchestration and VMM. We're also going to be joined on the stage here talking about hyperconverged and SimpliVity, our recent acquisition for evolving and enhancing our hyperconverged offerings. Then we're going to talk about Microsoft Azure Stack and how that fits within the HPE portfolio. And lastly, I'm going to talk about our composable infrastructure, focusing around HPE Synergy and the experiences there. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Mr. Doug DeWord, a colleague of mine on the HPE OneView product management team, focusing on Microsoft-centric solutions. So, Doug, there we go. Sorry about that. So let's talk about how System Center can solve a number of our customer challenges from an operation perspective, both from deployment as well as operational efficiencies.
Yeah, Chris, so what you have is, when you talk about hybrid IT, you talk about, the cloud, but you also talk about on-premise.
Right.
And for the on-premise things, lifecycle management is a big part. You still have to do it, whether it's hybrid cloud or whatever. If it's on-premise, you have to manage the lifecycle. So you're talking about things like deployment, you're talking about configuration, you talk about monitoring, you talk about managing the whole cycle of lifecycle management. So several of those things kind of jump out as being particular challenges that HPE, along with our integrations with OneView into System Center, help address some of those things. So things like deployment. Deployment can be challenging, can be time-consuming, it can be error-prone. You've got a lot of tools out there, and having to switch back and forth between tools is not particularly efficient.
Yeah, the unpredictability really starts to creep into our customers.
That's
Lack
right.
of innovation there.
And as well as the learning curve as
Right.
well. You just more tools to learn, and lots of them none of them well.
Absolutely.
So, and then obviously, downtime is a killer. It's disruptive, it's costly, and so how can you minimize the impact of downtime?
Right.
So what I'd like to do is talk about those in a little more detail in terms of how HPE and Microsoft have come together for those solving some of those problems. So we have a product that is an extension of our HPE OneView management product called HPE OneView for Microsoft System Center. And this is a series of plugins into the System Center products. And so some of the key things that we're going to focus on in the next few minutes here are things like deploying. We want to make you more efficient. We want to help you deploy your infrastructure faster by doing things like template-based deployment using HPE OneView, server profile templates, so that with just a few easy steps, you can consistently and reliably, install or expand a cluster or create a brand new Hyper-V cluster. We want to help you simplify IT operations, being able to visualize your configuration, from the virtual machine to the network edge, to make sure that you have consistent configurations. And ultimately, we want to help you increase your productivity, and a big part of that is health monitoring and health management, being able to rapidly respond to events that may cause downtime.
So this all seamlessly integrates, plugs into System Center Config Manager and VMM.
Yes.
A common tool that a lot of our operations folks utilize today, right?
That's right. So we have integrations with System Center Operations Manager, Configuration Manager, and Virtual Machine Manager.
Right. So we're tying in both the life cycle of the operating system, the patching nature of the operating system, but also taking into account the bare metal componentry, regardless if it is Hyper-V or generic Windows.
That's right, and giving you a unified experience so that the same tools that you're using for patching in your OS or updating or installing your OS, that you can integrate that in to manage your infrastructure.
Okay.
So let's take a look at deployment. Deployment's hard, okay? Long gone, luckily, are the days of actually plugging in CDs into the CD-ROM drive. I've been around for a while.
Or floppy disks in your case.
Yes. So, but there's a lot of opportunity for error. Okay, there's a lot of manual steps. There's plenty of opportunity to do things inconsistently, not at the same time. Think you got to install a 10-node cluster or add 10 nodes into a cluster or something like that. There's too many ways you can be not consistent, and it makes it really hard to troubleshoot. So you might have checklists, and you might have different people doing this, and you might have 10 or 15 steps that it takes before that server is stood up, and then you got to repeat that, multiply that times the number of servers that you're trying to do. And if you've got multiple staff doing that, someone might do something in a different order, they might skip a step. And trying to troubleshoot that at the end of the day, we know is really hard because you don't even hardly know where to look. So what we want to take a look at is how can HPE OneView with our integrations with, in this case, System Center Virtual Machine Manager, help you stand up a Hyper-V cluster in just a few simple steps.
And scripting is one way of getting to that level of automation, but it doesn't solve all those challenges, right?
That's right.
Even though we still have to do those on a host-by-host basis, we still have to ratify and certify that they work on newer platforms and newer products or solutions that are the vendors release, right?
Right, absolutely right. So what I want to do is show a short demonstration here, and just to set this up, what we're going to be looking at is System Center Virtual Machine Manager and an HPE plugin called a Fabric Management Add-in, which is a plugin into System Center Virtual Machine Manager, and we're going to show you how easy it is to, in this case, we're going to expand a cluster. We got a small 2-node cluster. We're going to add another node to it. This same process could be used for adding 10 nodes to it. It could also be used for creating a brand new cluster from bare metal servers. All right, so here what we have is the 2-node cluster. This is the UI that you're seeing is our UI within System Center Virtual Machine Manager. And what we're doing is we're selecting profiles which have this consistent configuration and then able to select from a list of bare metal servers. And so we present all of this. You then have networking configuration between the HP OneView profile and the VMM configuration. You can simply drag and drop to rearrange these to make sure that your networking has been set up consistently. After that, you enter in, computer names. If you have IP addresses and things like that, you can do that at this point as well. And from this point, you're almost done. You get an opportunity to review this, and you simply click deploy, and it launches this whole process of deployment. Now, again, remember, we could have selected a list of 10 bare metal servers, 20 bare metal servers, however many we would have had, and it would have done that deployment the same way on each one.
And this experience is both for our existing Blade system customers, rack mount, as well as HP.
Yes, it's for Blade system and for Synergy, where you have all of the network working from HP Virtual Connect and things like that. So you saw in just a few easy steps, we're able to get that consistent, repeatable, reliable process over and over and over again. So even now, if you came back in a few months later and wanted to add more nodes, you'd have the same exact configuration. Just as an example, in our lab, we took a brand new 16-node bare metal cluster, and we had it fully functional in under 1 hour for a full 16 nodes from bare metal to actually hosting VMs. Ready to host VMs. All right, so another thing that we talked about in lifecycle management is health monitoring and alerting. And we know that downtime, it's disruptive, it's costly, and it's frustrating. All right, and so what we're really looking for is to get that common view. So we have servers, network, storage from the hardware infrastructure view. You also have the operating system, you have the virtual machines, and you have the applications that are running on those virtual machines. So by using our HP OneView plugin for System Center Operations Manager, or SCOM, we get the best of both worlds combined there, where we take the hardware health monitoring that we provide through HP OneView, and we combine it with the capabilities that SCOM has for the OS and the apps and the VMs, and so you get that consistent view that's going to allow you exactly right. That's that minimize the number of tools that you have to use. You get everything in there. And you can also do things like, okay, so I have a problem. Is this under warranty? Or when does my warranty expire? So that's the kind of things, in addition to just the alerting that we can expose.
But outside of the alerting, there would be a set of recommended actions for a customer to take, whether it be modifying or needing to modify your vSwitch configuration or a particular hardware level event, the recommended actions to remediate that physical issue.
That's right. We don't just tell you that something went bad. We tell you what you can do to go. We tell you at least some ideas of how to go fix it. So let's take a look at a short demo here. So what we're looking at here is System Center Operations Manager with the HP OneView Management Pack. You see we've got here a listing of multiple instances of HPE OneView. We have a health dashboard, so at a glance you can see the overall status. And then what you're going to see here is a series of folders that represent the various parts of HPE infrastructure. So things like your synergy frames and blade enclosures. You're going to be able to, yes, and then also things like servers and server profiles. We'll actually help you with configuration drift. If you have a server that someone makes a change against the profile definition, you'll get an alert telling you that. So we can do servers, we do networking. From the server side, we're OS agnostic, so we don't really care what OS you have. So that's, in a multi-OS environment, that's a big thing. So the other thing is from the alerting perspective. So we have a master roll-up of all of the alerts. And when you go look at an alert, not only do you get things like the basic source, what device, but as we were talking about, Chris, is you get what possible causes of this and what can we do to fix it. So you get causes, resolution, and we also have links to other tools like HPE OneView. So what you're seeing here is directly from the SCOM console, we linked into HPE OneView for the device that had generated the alert, and we're able to use HPE OneView as a deeper troubleshooting tool, again, to help you solve that problem as quickly as you possibly can. All right, so as you saw here, those integrations we have with HPE OneView and with System Center Operations Manager in this case, really helped you respond quickly to minimize those downtime events and offer, deeper troubleshooting links into tools like OneView to help minimize that impact of failures in your data center.
By also providing as close as possible to a single pane of glass.
That's right. That's right. Now, an example of a customer who has, integrated a lot of these pieces in, and also has looked at things like the DevOps, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, is a company called EMIS Health. They're the largest healthcare services provider in the UK, and so their challenge was to speed up the time to market of new services that they provided to their customers. And the way that they did this was by implementing an HPE converged infrastructure integrated with HPE OneView to allow their developers to programmatically build repeatable environments. So we'll talk about this more in later in some of the scripting capabilities. But what it allowed them to do was achieve a 60% time savings in their deployment, an overall 38% productivity increase across the board. So what it meant was that their IT staff was more productive. They spent less time on day-to-day, maintenance, and they spent more time on innovation, which is why that, drives them to be the leading healthcare services provider that they have.
More quickly, rapidly provision new services to meet their expanding customer demand.
Absolutely.
For patient healthcare.
Yep. Right.
Thank you, Doug. Right. And for anyone who wants to talk more about System Center integration, you will be on the showroom.
Yep, come to the booth and I'll show you the System Center integrations. We've got live demos and all that kind of stuff.
Thank
Great.
you, sir.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Next, we're going to be joined up on stage here by Aftab Alam, who's product manager with our HPE Simplicity group. We're going to talk about how hyper-converged can help our customers better achieve a more rapid deployment of services within their infrastructure by focusing on an up-and-coming emerging technology of hyper-converged.
Sure. Thanks, Chris.
So can you help us with some of the challenges our customers face today and how hyper-converged can help them solve those issues?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go through over the next few minutes answering the question Chris just posed. A bit of introduction. I'm actually from the SimpliVity acquisition, so it's been around 6 months for us as part of HPE. We're excited to join the family. And the interesting thing about HPE's view of hyperconverged is that we have our own technology, SimpliVity. We have Azure Stack, which we partner with Microsoft on. And then we have Synergy, the composable infrastructure, all of which form building blocks of our vision of the next evolution of IT. So let me talk about SimpliVity. Aaron will get on stage in a bit and talk about Azure Stack. So the problem that we started to look at and hear about from our customers is that their legacy IT environment is very, very complicated. They started off with simple racks and servers and switches. And then they moved into, well, we need a backup solution, we need WAN optimization.
Centralized storage, virtualization.
Centralized storage, basically, next thing you knew, they had this IT environment that was complex, hard to manage, and they were spending a lot of time on break fix.
So help us better understand what hyperconverged really means in the data center. Where is its use cases? Where is it best in the data center?
Sure. Hyperconverged, in SimpliVity's view, is basically a general purpose workload. So basically what we're doing is we're collapsing your IT infrastructure down into the proven resilience and excellence of the DL380 platform. And we're bringing in as much of the your IT estate as possible. So WAN replication is something that we have built into our product. High availability is stuff that we have built into our product. And so the legacy environment that you see on this slide is basically the environment that we're replacing with HPE's approach to hyperconvergence. And the key thing that our customers really like about deploying, and we're going to go through a few customer examples, the SimpliVity product, is that they get to move their existing IT resources from break fix to being strategic assets for their business, which is the nirvana for IT departments across the globe.
Right.
So what is our approach to hyperconvergence? We basically have 3 tenets that we have designed our product around. It's powerful, it's simple, and it's efficient. It's powerful because we basically took all of those building blocks and collapsed them into a single infrastructure. We are hardware accelerated and software defined. So we actually have a purpose-built FPGA card that we put in every one of these SimpliVity 380 boxes that offloads data deduplication and compression and some network functionality into kind of a purpose-built card. What that allows is that more of your Intel general purpose cores can be dedicated to your workloads and not to supporting data duplication, which frankly is not something that's core to your business.
Right. Yeah. The proliferation of data across not just individual storage systems, but enterprise-wide, just again, we're not seeing that slow growth, exponential increase in growth.
Right. So we basically, to deal with the data explosion issue, we will only store 2 copies of unique data per SimpliVity environment. What that means is that I'm sure many of you have 20 or 40 VMs running Windows Server. Maybe you standardized on Windows Server 2012 R2. We only store 2 copies of the base Windows Server 2012 R2 image for high availability purposes. And any time that you clone a VM and you create a new Windows Server VM using 2012 R2, all we do is we basically track that you want to create a new Windows Server image, and we don't have to replicate that data. We basically just rehydrate that or hydrate that image from deduplicated blocks already on disk.
So that saves customers time from having to manage and maintain the
Absolutely, yes.
Across their fleet of SimpliVity.
Yes. The next thing that we're doing is that we want to make this simple. So you have existing IT resources that have existing skills, and we want to plug into the skills that you already have in your environment. So you already know vCenter, you know System Center Virtual Machine Manager, and we have plugins that we have for both of those environments that allow you to reuse your existing skills, not having to have your IT department learn new skills. Again, all for the purpose of letting them focus in on strategic projects for the business, not trying to learn new skills just because hyperconvergence happens to be the new cool buzzword of the day.
But again, to reemphasize the single pane of glass simplicity, as much as we're going to try to get to there, it allows our customers to reuse those tools, which is very important for operational learning.
Absolutely.
As well as conforming to existing processes customers have already well defined today.
Yes. And finally, it's efficient. So we're going to go through a few customer use cases, but as you modernize your IT infrastructure, you're naturally going to reduce the amount of rack space and IT assets that you need. But with SimpliVity's approach to hyperconvergence, and hyperconvergence in general with Synergy and with Azure Stack, you're going to just see that will be even more consolidated, saving you even more money and IT resource time. So we've actually done independent analysis. We've had third parties come in and do analysis, and we've actually compared ourselves to AWS as the leading cloud provider, and we have white papers available where a private cloud based on HPE's view of hyperconvergence is cheaper to run than a public cloud in AWS. Again, it really depends, there are probably business reasons that you want to have a hybrid approach, which HPE realizes as well. But also, as you modernize your IT infrastructure, your TCO is significantly higher with a hyperconverged deployment than it would be if you just replaced your servers, one for one.
Right, all the maintenance aspects
Yeah.
that come with the data migration.
And the legacy, the backup solutions that you need to keep up and running, the break fix you have to do, and sort of a hodgepodge of systems that you have in place today. So 3 of the 4 most deployed applications on SimpliVity are Microsoft systems. So the number 1 is SQL Server. Number 2 is Exchange. Yep. And SharePoint is another one of the most widely deployed applications. And Chris, one of the questions you asked, when would you go ahead and deploy SimpliVity?
Well, or better stated, why
Yeah.
would OLTP-based applications be better with hyperconverged?
Yeah. Basically, there's a set of use cases, the general purpose use cases, which OLTP fits into, which are really well designed for hyperconverged because of the data duplication benefits that we provide. So read intensive applications do really well. However, I will say that HPE's approach to hyperconvergence across Synergy, Azure Stack, and SimpliVity means that if you have a truly high I/O, low latency application, Synergy may be the appropriate solution for you. SimpliVity for general purpose line of business is a great product, and there are use cases that Aaron will talk about for Azure Stack. So let's go ahead and break down into 2 customers and sort of see a before and after view of their IT environment. So this is a Global 50 company. And they came to SimpliVity, and they had 6 data centers spread across 3 continents, over 80 racks of equipment, and they had IT silos. So they basically had the proliferation of the storage team, the networking team, and the server team, and within each of those groups, they had multiple subgroups. And they came to SimpliVity and basically said, okay, fine, we are skeptical of your approach to hyperconvergence, but work with us to see how the environment that we have can transition to a SimpliVity world. So this is the before view. Again, 80 plus racks of equipment. After we were, after we worked together, they basically went to three data centers, and in one of the data centers, they went from 34 racks to 3 racks of equipment. So think about the power and maintenance savings they got from that consolidation of equipment. And they're saying that they're getting $100 million savings from deploying SimpliVity, which matters. So what apps did they deploy on SimpliVity? Basically, they deployed Microsoft apps, they deployed VDI applications, and they use this for DevOps and for web applications. Yeah. So, moving right along, I'm sure that none of you have a data center that looks like this. So,
What do you mean? I have one at home.
yes, it's like basically wires. Like this is literally the build over time approach to IT. This was a smaller customer who came to us and basically had this data center, and they had a limited IT staff, and they were looking for us to help them consolidate their IT environment. So again, this is the before view of what happened. And one of the key issues that this customer had in particular, Chris, was that they moved, they didn't have a DR strategy, right?
Oops.
Disaster recovery is a crucially important part of every business, but it's incredibly hard to do well.
Right, and especially in this modern day of IT and
Yeah.
providing those digital services.
Yeah.
DR strategy is very important.
Yeah, so they came to us and they wanted us to help with that as well. So they moved to an environment where they moved from the picture that you saw before to a six-node SimpliVity federation. And 4 nodes, 4 DL380s in their primary site, and 2 DL380s in their disaster recovery site. And SimpliVity is taking care of that data replication for them. SimpliVity is the engine that they're using for the disaster recovery strategy. And they don't have to buy third-party disaster recovery applications. They don't have to worry about learning a new console or a new way of doing disaster recovery. And in this particular case, this customer actually will test his disaster recovery once a month. They've just written scripts that go ahead and create an isolated network, test out the disaster recovery, all within the SimpliVity console.
Right, because without a properly well-defined test plan,
Yeah.
and you're not testing it
Right.
for your DR strategy.
Hope is not a strategy.
Right, hope is not a strategy. That's right.
Finally, we talked about our differentiated view of our technology, and I just wanted to finish my presentation with kind of what our console looks like. This is actually a console that shows up both in VMM and in vCenter. And you start off with, and this is actual customer data. We have permission to use it. You start out with the logical data that's stored in the environment, in this case, 1.15 petabytes of data. And then the efficiency. So in this particular case, the customer got 40-to-1 efficiency, which saved over a petabyte of data written to disk, right? So that data.
So not just the simplifying of the amount of storage they have, but reducing the writes, which means longer lifespan,
Yep.
less churn of hardware.
Yep. Yep. And then finally, what the available capacity on their system is. Like if they were literally to write all of that 1.15 terabytes, that 17 terabytes of data that they have available would be consumed pretty quickly. However, using SimpliVity's approach to hyperconvergence, they've got plenty of space left.
Right, and also when it comes to the DR strategy of the replication
Yep.
back to your customer, they can simplify the number of nodes they have in their primary data center. They can reduce the amount they need
Yes.
for their DR site. So you're saving both not just on data consumed, but also data on the wire, right?
Absolutely, yes. So they can actually have a smaller WAN link between DR sites. And finally, these are the applications that this particular customer deployed on this. Again, SQL, Exchange, and Dynamics are the key Microsoft workloads that they deployed. And then they had sort of custom line of business applications. And just like Doug, I'll be at the booth the entire week. So if you have questions about our approach to hyperconvergence, I'm happy to chat with any of you.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
Tim. Appreciate it. I know I have a better understanding about hyperconverged. All right, we're going to be joined here on the stage by Aaron Spurlock, who is on our product team responsible for Microsoft Solutions, here to talk to us about Azure Stack and the great things that are coming with our partnership.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Chris. So yeah, I think the slide pretty much sums it all. We're really excited for Azure Stack to finally be here. It's been a very long road. It's been a lot of hard work by all of the teams, HPE and Microsoft. But we're finally here, and we're very proud to announce general availability of the HPE Azure Stack for Microsoft, HPE ProLiant for Microsoft Azure Stack solution. So real big kudos to the team. Really looking forward to talking with many of you on what the possibilities for Azure Stack are going to be going forward. One of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about, here we go. One of the things I wanted to kind of talk about and set the stage, if you're not familiar with Azure Stack, if you're thinking about why HPE and how does HPE fit into the whole Azure Stack kind of situation, what we really looked at very early on was for a way to differentiate our solution from the other competitors that were going to be bringing Azure Stack offerings to market. And we did that for a very specific reason. And what we were really targeting, what we really wanted to do, was provide a way for customers to really drill down and zero in on the particular configuration that they needed, that they wanted, in order to obtain the maximum value for their Azure Stack investment. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, rather than taking a single, one-size-fits-all approach or a T-shirt size approach to Azure Stack, that certainly would have been an easier way for us to do it. But we thought there was a lot more opportunity to giving customers some configuration flexibility around things like scale units, around memory, around processors. We wanted to do that because that directly affects the number of VMs and the kind of services that you can host. So we really thought there was a big opportunity to provide some additional differentiation and some additional value around that Azure Stack solution.
So is it fair to say that what we learned and took away from our converged systems solution offerings, the flexibility we have there and being able to define the type of platform, the specifications for that to meet the workload the customer's looking to host and support for that converged infrastructure, if you will?
Yeah, that's a really great point, Chris. Actually, we took a lot of learnings from a lot of different platforms. Converged systems was definitely a key one there. What we were really looking to do was kind of strike a balance between all of the configuration flexibility you get from a component sale, such as a DL380, and an appliance sale, which, again, we thought there was more opportunity and more value to be had by kind of striking that balance. So what we really wanted to do was kind of hit the notion of a solution sale with Azure Stack and kind of couple those two together, again, to make as much value and to drive as much performance and capability into the system as we could.
The rigidity doesn't fall within our nomenclature, does it?
No. Appliances are really great for the one use case that they're typically designed for, but the problem is that once you diverge from that use case, the value and the complexity really kind of drop off, or sorry, the complexity rises and the value drops off because of that. But we didn't just stop with the innovation, with innovation at the infrastructure layer. We really wanted to look for every facet of the solution that we were going to be bringing to market and how we could drive innovation and differentiation there. So you'll also notice that we've got flexible capacity listed. I think that's another good example of how that's not really an infrastructure component of the solution, but it's a critical key component of how the system gets acquired by organizations and how it gets consumed. We actually have the ability to provide a single consumption-based bill for the entire solution operating in someone's data center on a monthly basis. That's hardware, that's software, that's services, that's support, that's the whole 9 yards. And that's something that nobody else can touch. So we're really excited to be able to offer things like that, again, to make sure that you're driving the most value you can out of your Azure Stack investment.
So in other words, you're taking the power of Azure as it is in the public cloud, with Microsoft bringing it localized to a private cloud offering, the capabilities that Azure Stack offers, but also then the flexibility model that public clouds offer of they pay as you grow, consume as you grow type.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. In a lot of respects, it's almost like operating an instance of Azure Stack within your data center. And there's different shades to that, but when you combine it with the power of something like flex capacity, it really kind of turns the volume up to 11, so to speak, because you're basically paying for the entire system on a consumption basis, but at the same time, you have ownership, you have control, and it's operating within your walls. Right. So it's really a powerful combination.
And it also reduces the acquisition time, as we all know about Mother Nature and price markets in terms of individual componentry. We've never experienced like SSD shortages or DRAM chip shortages. No one ever is impacted by that.
Yeah, and that's all to say, we haven't really touched on, kind of the simplicity that something like Azure Stack brings to, a hybrid cloud, private cloud kind of implementation. As anybody who has deployed Azure Stack in their data center understands, that is no trivial feat. That is no mean task to undertake. When you have something like a solution that's backed by companies like HPE and Microsoft, it really, having them work together to deploy an Azure Stack solution inside of 3 to 5 days is really a powerful alternative, and it really drives a lot of capability and opportunity. The last point I wanted to hit here was the HPE unique Azure Stack Innovation Centers. And again, this was another area that we saw an opportunity to innovate This is, again, unique to HPE. No other Azure Stack vendor has this, but we have 2 locations right now. One of them is in Geneva. The other one is in Redmond. And these are places where folks can come to learn about Azure Stack. They can bring workloads. They can sample. They can look at test workloads. We can do engagements live or remotely, but it's really an opportunity to kind of dig in and dive deep around what Azure Stack is all about and what the possibilities are for your business in an Azure Stack kind of a situation.
Is that with HPE and Microsoft resources?
That's
together?
correct. They're jointly funded by both HPE and Microsoft. So there are Microsoft technology centers all over the world. Those are funded exclusively by Microsoft. But again, the Azure Stack Innovation Centers are unique because you're getting access to experts not just on the Microsoft side, but also on the infrastructure HP Enterprise side as well.
Thank you.
Great point. All right, so if you're still kind of wondering what Azure Stack is all about and if it's right, there's a couple of sort of traditional hybrid use cases that we think fit really well with an Azure Stack kind of solution. Edge and disconnected is probably the one that you hear about the most. That's your typical cruise ship or aircraft kind of an operation. And again, because Azure Stack is designed from really the tops down, not the bottoms up, but the tops down to be consistent with Azure Public Cloud, you have this notion of consistency built in. And the applications work exactly, they're designed to work exactly the same, whether they're being operated in an Azure data center, whether they're being operated in your partner's data center, or whether they're being operated by you on premises. And that allows a lot of freedom in terms of where applications get located, how they can be architected, because now in a situation such as a disconnected scenario, you can now push an instance of Azure out to the edge of your own network, and you're not reliant on traversing not only your network, but sometimes the public internet, all the way back to public cloud to access your data and algorithms. So that's a really exciting use case.
So with the portability then comes the simplified in managing that infrastructure too.
That's right, and portability is a really good point as well, because again, because Azure Stack is designed to be consistent across the public and the hybrid instances, it really unlocks a lot of capability and a lot of flexibility, not only with where you place applications, but how you design those applications, because now your developers no longer have to code to 2 paradigms, and moving applications is a trivial matter.
Yep.
Also wanted to talk a little bit about data sovereignty and security. That's another issue where we're seeing a lot of interest for Azure Stack. So as you are, I'm sure, are well aware, there are a lot of instances, a lot of governments, a lot of regions of the world where moving data around is really not a trivial thing. It's subject to rules and regulations. It's subject to laws. And on top of that, even outside of data sovereignty, sometimes there are privacy concerns or IP concerns. And so moving data or algorithms is just really not a good fit. And again, being able to place an Azure Stack instance within your data center or within your service partner's data center, service provider's data center, is really a great way to be able to make sure that you're still compliant with those rules and regulations, but it's still a model that is going to be, that will allow you to take advantage of cloud operating models and all of the agility that they offer.
Right, so you have the ability of putting workloads that don't have stringent security requirements or government regulations in, say, a public cloud offering, but then a lot of the back end or the secure connectivity is provided by an on-premise Azure Stack.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I think the other thing that we noticed too, a lot of customers are coming to us because what they'd like to do is maybe start off their development process in an Azure Stack environment, and then once they're ready to go production, then they'll make the determination whether or not they want to keep that on-premise or whether or not they want to port that to the public cloud. Again, because of that built-in portability that you get, there's another whole other set of opportunities that you get with regard to flexibility in your workloads.
And as we talk about DevOps in the next section, the continuous integration, continuous development type models that DevOps empowers our customers to do, that fits well within that.
That's exactly
that new paradigm.
That's exactly right. Okay, well,
you have a special guest?
I do. And what I'd like to do right now is invite Jeff DeVerter up on stage. Jeff's the CTO for Microsoft Technologies for Rackspace. And Jeff, maybe while you're coming up, what I'd like to maybe start off with, if you kind of help our audience understand a little bit about how Rackspace sees itself in the solution with Microsoft and HPE.
Happy to. So, whoa, I'm loud. Hello. So, again, my name is loudly Jeff DeVerter, and I've been with Rackspace for about 9.5 years. And Rackspace has built its business on, in fact, in the early days, our business was built on the fact that we could turn a server on for a customer in 14 days, and that was awesome. But in reality, back in the early 2000s, that was measured in enterprises more in the 6 to 8 to 14 weeks before something could be online. And what we did was we built up this business that said we can help you manage and operate your servers better than you can, because it's all we do all day long to allow you to focus on your business. Well, as we matured, as virtualization became a thing, as cloud became a thing, and we even built one of those clouds, what we realized is the place for managed services in single tenancy on bare metal was still a real thing. But as we matured in these other offerings and these other capabilities, what we did was we had these capabilities that pushed us farther and farther up stack. That became nowhere more prevalent than when our services that we create for our public cloud offerings, like what we have for Azure. Because when you think about what we're doing for Azure, we're not managing the infrastructure for Azure. We are managing the solutions that go on top of there. So along comes this thing called Azure Stack, and Azure Stack comes along, and the way that Microsoft has created this, has engineered this as an offering, is it's this tightly coupled relationship between the software creator of Microsoft and the infrastructure provider, in this case, of course, HPE. Microsoft manages and makes sure that the software is there to be patched and updated, and with really little to no interaction from the hoster in this case, or even you guys if it's running in your data centers. And then from an infrastructure perspective, it's a black box. HPE, it's not that they're mean and don't want us to go play with their hardware. The reality is it's a closed certified system that both HPE and Microsoft have said this is compliant with all of the requirements and certifications that it takes to run one of these things. Well, where does that leave a company like Rackspace in that scenario? Well, Aaron has already called out that building and managing an Azure Stack environment is not for the faint of heart. It is complex. In fact, operating that cloud is a whole new set of challenges that exist. You know, if you think about some of the aspects of Azure you know and care about, like Azure Functions or Azure Sites, websites, managing all of those resources behind the scenes is a whole new thing that needs to be taken care of. In fact, even though Microsoft's going to make sure that the software where it needs to be, and HPE is going to ensure that the hardware is 110%, that still leaves things like managing all of those services that you want to run inside of your Azure Stack up to somebody. In this case, it would be you. But with our offering, it actually leaves it to Rackspace, so that Azure Stack really just does appear from a functionality perspective to you as just another Azure zone that you would consume, and you would work with Rackspace to ensure that the services and the capabilities that you want are there and available and ready for your applications to sort of consume. So there's that gulf that no one's really talking about, is how do you operate that cloud, and then what are the requirements that you have around that. So that's where Rackspace has teamed up with HPE to really help to solve that last mile in delivering those services, whether they're running in our data center or in your data center.
And Jeff, how has the customer interest been on your side?
It's been pretty huge. So, Microsoft came out with the OneNode POCs. Well, they've changed their name to the Developer Kit. Earlier this year, we've had an offering on the HPE 380s. And DL380s, and that interest has been pretty huge, just because the customers have been able to get those, have them online inside 24 hours, and be able to just use them on a month-to-month basis as they've needed them. And now, of course, as we moved into production, tons of customer interest.
in transparency. Everybody's going through the transition to the new chipsets, so our customers have been waiting for those to be on our data center floor.
Excellent. And so if customers want more information on how to find out more about Rackspace offerings, where would they go?
Just over to rackspace.com/Azure, and everything from an Azure and an Azure Stack perspective is all nestled in there.
Okay, excellent. Jeff, thank you so much. Appreciate
Glad
it.
to be here. Thank you.
Have a good one. Chris, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jeffrey and Aaron.
Synergy auto-discovers and assembles the resources of compute, storage, and fabric. As you plug them into the chassis, it automatically figures that out. It then presents a catalog of workload templates to deploy that app. So for the mobile backend, let's say we're using the open source tool Docker. We take the Docker workload template, put compute and storage in that, the right amount of compute and the right amount of storage, because whatever it needs, it'll flex to that specific need. And when it's done, it returns those resources to the pool. They can be used by something else. To deploy that business critical database, this one happens to run on Microsoft SQL. Basically grab that application. We're going to run this one bare metal. No, you don't have to use virtualization or anything like that. We're going to put that application plus the compute and storage into a workload template that automatically deploys onto the infrastructure. And I set that one up to scale for high availability. So the important thing is that Synergy scales across multiple racks doing exactly this. So you can have an entire rack full of resources that can be applied to any given workload, which eliminates stranded resources, reduces cost, and increases your speed.
That was Rick Lewis, our Senior Executive VP of our software-defined cloud group, my boss's 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 boss, last year at HPE Discover in London. The year prior to that in London, where we talked about our new composable infrastructure called HPE Synergy. So we're going to spend the remainder of the time here talking about what is composable infrastructure and how does HPE Synergy fit within that new paradigm, that new model of managing a shared infrastructure or that is HPE Synergy. First and foremost, when I first started this conversation, I mentioned simplicity. Being able to deliver an open API for our customers to consume. We fully know and are aware that our customers do different things. They use different technologies, they use different products. From an operations perspective, everyone here in the room knows PowerShell or should know PowerShell or something like it, all the way to Python, to Perl, or even more programmatic languages like Java, JavaScript, to be able to use those common languages that our customers know and to be able to integrate with our platform infrastructure controller that is the HPE Synergy Composer. The HPE Synergy Composer is powered by HPE OneView. And that when OneView is the infrastructure controller, it is the gateway into managing as well as monitoring that shared infrastructure, the composable infrastructure itself. And then thirdly, certainly not last, Image Streamer. It's an integral part to being able to rapidly provision operating systems, to provide a virtual machine template-like experience for rapidly provisioning operating systems, along with getting the bare metal right at the configuration in a policy-driven manner. So as Doug had talked about early on in his presentation about how our customers have to take each node one by one through some form of a run book, whether that's through a D-ring binder, going through the different steps or a PDF, and then having different folks within that team hopefully adhering to that same model. But under the covers, there are different sets of APIs or proprietary binaries that customers have to become aware of or have to know about. And HPE on the ProLiant side is no stranger to proprietary binaries. If anyone here has worked with the SSTK, the Smart Start Scripting Toolkit, knows that there are a number of components within it to be able to configure certain aspects of a system, like the system ROM as an example, or local embedded disk storage, or the iSCSI or fiber channel attached storage to that system, to that platform, to the edge network connectivity of what networks or VLANs that need to be presented to that host or to a group of hosts within a cluster. But all of those, even when I mentioned early on as a scripting capability, customers have to iterate through those every generation from a vendor. Take a contrast of going from Gen 8 to Gen 9 to Gen 10, our customers would have to certify and ratify that process every time. HP OneView abstracts a lot of that away to where it is simply referenced as a server profile or a server profile template and could be called with a, quote, a single line of code. Behind it, there are thousands of lines of code, obviously. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you otherwise. But the power of it is that I make a single call, whether it is from PowerShell, could be a chef recipe, could be a Puppet kickstart. Whatever the case may be, it's a single invocation, can be tied into our customer's DevOps strategy, their continuous integration, continuous development type pipelines, to be able to deploy that infrastructure in a consistent manner. At the same time, tracking compliance of whatever is set at the policy level to what the running configuration is for those cases or chances of configuration drift. So along with that, allows our customers to reduce the time it takes to provision bare metal systems or the on-premise, whether it be Hyper-V or a containerized instance of Docker or something else, from hours, days to minutes. And just to talk about the power of our API, this is to represent what our current ecosystem snapshot looks like. You'll see a lot of different players on this board. Obviously, Microsoft is one of those key partners of ours. We classify the system center integration we have with them as a tier 1 provider. The other type of integrations here are classified under our open source development, to where you can go to our GitHub GitHub organization and find all of our integration kits. So if you're looking to run Docker, or you want to use Ruby, or you want to use some other type of development language or scripting language, as well as all the assets, the sample code, as well as example runbooks, they're all there available for you. And we fully realize that an ecosystem, in order to drive adoption and innovation, is pretty key and important to our strategy and to our customer strategy as well too. So when we talk about the single infrastructure for both the traditional IT workloads as well as software defined, we're talking about the power of being able to deploy systems in a traditional manner, to where IT operations are the ones that are focusing on the service delivery, to the new world order of DevOps, handing the keys off to another group like our SQL group, or to our web apps group, for them to be able to run and execute their runbooks or their orchestration tools to interact with the underlying hardware platform. It allows our customers to flex up, flex down those different types of workloads. So if there's a business critical application that needs to have more, quote, processing power during the day, but not at nighttime or at particular days or hours during the day, we have the ability to or the customer has the ability to program what they need in terms of deploying, and as well as returning those resources back to the pool of the infrastructure itself. Another key area here is obviously app dev tests, so CI/CD type pipeline operations. As Aaron mentioned, being able to do your dev test in something like Azure public offering, and then being able to pull that down into a different container type workload locally on premise to run that in a more secure type of environment because of regulatory compliance reasons. So that's on premise instead of in the cloud. And then here, we're one of our primary customers, a great reference customer of ours. They've been to both Discover London as well as Discover Las Vegas. And when we first pitched to them this idea of composable infrastructure about 4 years ago, their comment back to us, you can't deliver it to us fast enough. When can we get our hands on it? Especially with Image Streamer as being an integral part of the solution. because they face a lot of different challenges in terms of being able to deploy an application as well as services, and they are a dynamic customer. They don't deploy statically. For their line of business, they are in the medical industry, to where they are doing research and development for different drugs, different procedures, and their scientists and their doctors need to have different types of systems to run different models and perform analytical data computations to figure out what it is that they're trying to do. And they run on-premise OpenStack with containers and Docker. So when they go off and spin up a new instance of a Docker node into either a new swarm or an existing swarm, they're running a Chef workbook to orchestrate the entire delivery of that new system, ready to be consumed by various different workloads for their scientists. And by the way, all of their code that they use in-house is available on their GitHub organization, GitHub/Hudson Alpha. And you'll be able to see all the code samples that they use to integrate into OpenStack, as well as Docker and their Chef recipes. So they're able to reduce the time it takes of going from 4 days, which to a lot of enterprise customers are like, that's fast, to 2 hours. And they have a net new bare metal infrastructure ready to be consumed. And then I'm going to wrap up here by talking about 2 key reference architectures that we have published today. More is on the way with respect to HP Synergy. The example on the left-hand side here is SQL Server 2016 in a few different types of configurations, both using the Synergy 480, 660 type models, depending on the type of IOPS that are required for different types of workloads. The data warehouse configuration is utilizing more of the 660 platform for the high availability aspects. And then on the right-hand side, we have reference architecture for SharePoint and Microsoft Exchange on-premise using the Synergy 480 models. So being able to deploy those workloads in a consistent manner, and those reference architectures are vetted by not just HPE, but in co-authoring with Microsoft as well. So we've had a good conversation here today. I hope that you guys have a good starting foundation about how HPE delivers on and helps Microsoft's message about the hybrid IT and being able to have portable type workloads, ranging from HPE Synergy all the way up to, SimpliVity all the way up to HPE Synergy. Come see us in booth 701. I will be there. Aaron will be there, and so will Doug and FTAB. We do have about 12 minutes or so. If there are any questions from the audience, we can certainly take that. Otherwise, we are done a little bit early. And there is an evaluation. Someone didn't remove that one part of the slide. So thank you for your time today.